A lot of deadly weapons were invented during the Second World War, but Japan had the deadliest one, a weapon so deadly that even the Americans had to destroy it so no one else could see it. This top-secret weapon would have changed the game for Japan during the war, but it failed to meet its potential. What was Japan's top-secret weapon, and why was it not used to win the war? World War II involved virtually every part of the world from 1939 to 1945. During the Second World War, three significant antagonists, the United States, Germany, and Japan, all sought to develop horrific weapons: an atomic bomb, chemical agents, and germ or biological weapons. Japan had 2 atomic bomb programs, 1 army and 1 navy, and a significant chemical warfare effort. But the most terrifying was the Japanese biological weapon program. The I-400 class was the brainchild of Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, Commander-in-Chief of the Japanese Combined Fleet. Shortly after the attack on Pearl Harbor, he conceived the idea of taking the war to the United States mainland by making aerial attacks along the US western and eastern seaboard using submarine-launched naval aircrafts. He commissioned Captain Kameto Kuroshima to make a feasibility study. Yamamoto submitted the proposal to Fleet Headquarters on January 13, 1942. It called for 18 large submarines capable of making 3 round trips to the west coast of the United States without refueling, or 1 round trip to any point on the globe. Construction of the I-400 commenced at Kure Dockyards on January 18, 1943, and 4 more boats followed. The I-401 in April 1943, the I-402 on October of 1943 at Sasebo, I-403 September 1943 at Kobe, and I-404 February 1944 at Kure. Only 3 were completed. Following Yamamoto's death in April 1943, the number of aircraft-carrying submarines to be built was reduced from 18 to 9, then 5, and finally 3. Only I-400 and I-401 entered service. 402 was completed on July 24, 1945, 5 weeks before the war's end, but never reached sea. Each submarine had 4 1,680 kilowatt or 2,250 horsepower engines and carried enough fuel to go around the world 1.5 times more than enough to reach the United States traveling east or west. Measuring more than 120 meters or 390 feet long overall, they displaced 5,900 tons or 6,500 short tons, more than double their typical American contemporaries. The cross-section of its pressure hull had a unique figure-of-8 design which afforded the necessary strength and stability to handle the weight of a sizable on-deck aircraft hangar. The conning tower was offset to port to allow the stowage of 3 aircrafts along the vessel's center line. A cylindrical watertight aircraft hangar was located approximately amidships on the top deck, 31 meters or 102 feet long, and 3.5 meters or 11 feet in diameter. The outer access door could be opened hydraulically from within or manually from outside by turning a large hand wheel connected to a rack and spur gear. The door was made waterproof with a 51mm thick rubber gasket. Situated atop the hangar were 3 waterproofed Type 96 triple-mounted 25mm autocannon for AA defense, 2 aft and 1 forward of the conning tower. A 25mm autocannon on the pedestal mount was located just aft the bridge. 1 Type 11 140mm 5.5-inch deck gun was positioned aft of the hangar. It had a range of 15 kilometers, 9.3 miles. 8 torpedo tubes were mounted in the bow, 4 above and 4 below. There were no aft tubes. Stowed in an open recessed compartment on the forward port side, just below the top deck, was a collapsible crane used to retrieve the submarine's Siren float plates. The crane had an electrically operated hoist and could lift approximately 4.5 tons or 5 short tons. It was raised mechanically to a height of 8 meters or 26 feet via a motor inside the boat. The boom extended out to 11.8 meters, or 39 feet. A unique trim system was fitted to the boats, allowing them to loiter submerged and stationary while awaiting the return from their aircraft. However, the operation of this system was noisy, and its usefulness was doubtful. Strung along the submarine's gunwales were two parallel sets of demagnetization cables, running from the stern to the bow planes, which were meant to project against magnetic mines by nullifying the magnetic field, which usually triggers the mine's fusing system. The submarines were equipped with two periscopes of German manufacture, about 12.2 meters, or 40 feet, long, one for use during daylight and the other at night. A special anechoic coating made from gum, asbestos, and adhesives was applied to the hulls, from the waterline to the bilge keel. This coating was based on German research, though entirely different in composition from German anechoic tiles such as Alberich or Turnmat. This was intended to absorb or diffuse enemy sonar pulses and dampen reverberations from the boat's internal machinery, theoretically making submerged detection more difficult. However, its effectiveness was never conclusively established. In May of 1945, I-401 was fitted with a German-supplied snorkel, a hydraulically raised air intake device, allowing the boat to run its diesel engines and recharge its batteries while remaining at periscope depth. This retrofit occurred while the ship was laid up at Cure for repairs after being damaged by an American mine in April. The I-400 class subs were unwieldy and relatively challenging to maneuver while surfaced, owing to their small rudders. The superstructure also caused the sub to veer off course during strong winds. The maximum safe diving depth of the I-400 class submarine was only 82% of its overall length, which presented problems if the submarine dived at too steep of an angle in an emergency. Because of their large aircraft hangars and conning towers, all I-400 class boats had significant visual and radar signatures on the surface and could easily be detected by aircraft. Dive time was 56 seconds, nearly double that of US fleet subs, which made the boats more accessible to destroy them from the air when caught on the surface. Like other Japanese submarines, crew members in I-400 subs had no air conditioning to control temperatures in tropical waters and no flush toilets. Lack of cold storage greatly limited the crew's diet, while inadequate sleeping quarters forced some crew to sleep on the decks or in passageways. The hangar of the I-400s was initially designed to hold two aircrafts. In 1943, however, Commander Yasuo Fujimori, submarine staff officer of the Naval General Staff, requested it to be enlarged. This was deemed feasible, and as remodeled, the I-400s could stow up to 3 Aichi M6A Siren float plates. The Siren was explicitly designed for use aboard the submarines and could carry an 1,800-pound bomb 620 miles at 295 miles per hour. To fit inside the narrow confines of the hangar, the floats were removed and stowed. The wings rotated 90 degrees and folded backwards hydraulically against the fuselage. The horizontal stabilizers folded down, and the top of the vertical stabilizer folded over so the overall forward profile of the aircraft was within the diameter of its propeller. When deployed for flight, the aircraft had a wingspan of 12 meters, or 39 feet, and a length of 11.6 meters, or 38 feet. The crew of 4 could prepare and launch all 3 in 30 minutes, or 15 minutes if the plane's pontoons were not first attached, making recovery impossible. As the Siren would normally be launched at night, parts of the areas of the aircraft were coated with luminescent paint to ease assembly in the dark. The Sirens were launched from a 26-meter or 85 feet Type 4 No. 2 Model 10 compressed air catapult on the forward deck of the submarine. Underneath the catapult track were 4 high-pressure air flasks connected in parallel to a piston. The aircraft mounted atop collapsible carriages via catapult attachment points along their fuselages would be slung 70 to 75 feet along the track. However, the piston only moved between 8 and 10 feet during operation. 2 sets of pontoons for the Sirens were stored in special watertight compartments just below the main deck on either side of the catapult track. From there, they could be quickly slid forward on ramps and attached to the plane's wings. A third set of pontoons and additional spares were kept inside the hangar. The aircrafts were to be launched by catapult and fly their missions. The launching submarine was to submerge and stay in place to allow the aircraft to navigate back to the area by dead reckoning, where it would land on the water with its floats and be hoisted back aboard by crane. Overall, the system was the same as used by Japanese Navy cruisers and lightweight cruisers when launching their reconnaissance float planes like the Aichi E-13A, only with aircraft specifically designed for use with the I-400 class submarine, and with the added complexity of having to locate a submerged and hidden vessel on return from the mission. Although this was the typical mode of operation, in cases where fast launching and recovery were essential for escape, the float planes would be launched without their floats and ditched upon landing, saving the time spent recovering the aircraft, which was a complex and lengthy procedure. This had the added benefit of eliminating the weight and considerable drag of the large and bulky floats, which increased the speed and range of the aircraft, but made any recovery of the plane after completing the mission impossible. In extreme circumstances, the aircraft could theoretically be launched and abandoned altogether while the submarine beat a hasty retreat, leaving the crews to fly their missions with no hope of return, perhaps as a kamikaze mission. Following an inspection of Rabaul in August 1943, Captain Chikao Yamamoto and Commander Yasuo Fujimori conceived the idea of using the Sentoku secret submarine attack to destroy the locks of the Panama Canal in an attempt to cut American supply lines to the Pacific Ocean and hamper the transfer of U.S. ships. Intelligence gathering on the proposed target began later that year. The Japanese knew that American fortifications existed on both sides of the canal. On the Atlantic, the large coastal artillery batteries of Fort Sherman had a range of 30,000 yards, or 17 miles, or 27 kilometers, preventing enemy ships from getting near enough to shell the locks. In the months following the attack on Pearl Harbor, air and sea patrols had been strengthened around both entrances and barrage balloons, and anti-submarine nets erected. In August 1942, the 88th Coast Anti-Aircraft Artillery Unit was added to help defend against aerial attacks. Before the attack could commence, Okinawa fell, and word reached Japan that Allies were preparing an assault on the Japanese home islands. The Japanese Naval General Staff concluded the Panama Canal attack would have little impact on the war's outcome, and more direct and immediate action was necessary to stem the American advance. 15 American aircraft carriers had assembled at the Ulithi Atoll, preparatory to making a series of raids against the home islands. The Japanese mission was changed to an attack on the Ulithi base. Following the delivery, I-13 and I-14 were to sail for Hong Kong, where they would embark 4 Siren attack planes. They would then head to Singapore and join I-400 and I-401 for further operations. The second phase of the Ulithi attack was codenamed the Arashi Storm. I-400 and I-401 were to rendezvous at a predetermined point on the night of the 14th and 15th of August. On August 17th, they launched their 6 Sirens on a kamikaze mission against the American carriers before daybreak. The Sirens, each with an 800-kilogram or 800-pound bomb bolted to its fuselage, were to fly less than 50 meters or 160 feet above water to avoid radar detection, and the American fighters expected to be patrolling 4,000 meters or 13,000 feet above. Just before departing Maizuru Naval Station, the Sirens were completely overpainted with silver and American stars and bars insignias covering the red Hinomaru, a direct violation of the rules of war. This was an attempt to further confuse recognition if the aircraft were prematurely spotted, but the pilots did not receive it well. Some felt it was both unnecessary and a personal insult to fly American markings and dishonorable to the Imperial Navy. Following the attack on Ulithi, I-400 and I-401 would sail for Hong Kong. There, they would take on 6 more Sirens and sail for Singapore, where fuel oil was more readily available. They would then join I-13 and I-14 and stage further attacks with a combined force of 10 Siren aircraft. On June 22nd, I-13 and I-14 arrived at Maizuru Harbor to take on fuel. They reached Ominato on July 4th to pick up their Sayun reconnaissance aircraft. I-13 departed for Truk on July 11th, but never reached her destination. She was detected running on the surface, attacked, and damaged by radar-equipped TBM Avengers on July 16th. An American destroyer escort later arrived and sank her with depth charges. Japan surrendered before the Ulithi attack was launched, and on August 22, 1945, the crews of the submarines were ordered to destroy all their weapons. The torpedoes were fired without arming, and the aircrafts were launched without unfolding the wings and stabilizers. When I-400 surrendered to the American destroyer, Blue, the US crew was astounded at her size, nearly 24 feet or 7.3 meters longer than the USS Blue and just as wide, considerably longer and broader than most significant American fleet submarine of the day. The Japanese conceived of an attack on the United States through the use of biological weapons directed explicitly at civilian populations in San Diego, California. Dubbed Operation Cherry Blossoms at Night, the plan was to launch aircrafts from 5 I-400 submarines near Southern California at night, who would then drop infected flea bombs on the intended target in the hope that the resulting infection would spread to the entire western seaboard and kill tens of thousands of people. The plan was scheduled for September 22, 1945, but Japan surrendered before the operation was carried out. I-402 was completed shortly before the war ended, but it had been converted to a tanker while being built and was never equipped with aircraft. Despite its lethal reputation, the I-400 met its end under mysterious circumstances. Upon completion of the inspection, the submarines were scuttled in the waters off Kalailoa, near Oahu in Hawaii, by torpedoes from US submarines. The wreck was rediscovered in March 2005, about 800 meters deep. The I-400 class submarine, Imperial Japanese Navy (IJN) submarines, were the largest submarines of World War II and remained the largest ever built until nuclear ballistic missile submarines were constructed in the 1960s. Do you think these submarines would have helped Japan win the war if they had been used earlier in the war? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section below.